This is Carrie and Summer with the Say My Name podcast that gives a voice to women's stories. It's my story, it's your story, it's our stories of pain and healing.
Betrayal doesn't begin to describe the knife that I pull out of my side. So I'ma put the past behind me, 'cause I got strength inside me, and a strength that I wanna share with you.
Welcome to episode 10 of the Say My Name podcast, part of the Say My Name project. On this episode, we welcome Debbie Bauer, who has suffered Munchausen by proxy at the hands of her mother during all of her childhood and most of her adult life. We are so grateful that she has had the courage to open up about this very personal and very real struggle. Essentially, this is the first time that she's ever really told her story outside of a therapy room. If you have questions or want more information on Munchausen or Munchausen by proxy, we have included website information on the podcast description tile.
Welcome to the Say My Name podcast, part of the Say My Name project. We're so excited to have my amazing and wonderful friend, Debbie Bauer, here with us.
And she's my friend too.
I introduced you to her.
But we go out a lot together now. Just kidding.
We FaceTime all day. Okay, Debbie, say hi.
Hello.
What we know about you is that you have a significant story, just like we all do, and that you've struggled with telling it, and you're at a point now where you're ready to share, and you're ready to open up about that, and we can't wait to hear about it, because we want to let other women know that they're not alone, and that if some of the things that you went through, they've also experienced, that they can come out the other side just like you have.
How do you feel about telling your story?
I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I'm nervous to tell it. It's because I'm owning it. And that's definitely, I've only ever told it in a secure setting of a therapist. So now it's getting out there and it'll be good.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It will.
Let's pretend like we're your therapist.
Yeah. I need a couch.
We got
I'll lay on the bed.
We do have margaritas. That's as much as we can offer you.
That's good. In a yellow cup. So we're
Do
good.
you really sit on a couch though?
Yeah.
Like you lay down on one?
Ever
No.
been to a therapist?
Have you
I
never?
have, but I've just been in a chair.
Oh, no. A nice comfy couch. And I put a pillow. Like I hold a pillow and then a box of tissues. Yeah. It's good. Therapeutic.
Yeah.
So here's my therapy tonight.
Well, you're amazing. We think you're amazing. So
Yes.
just deep breaths. Let's start at the very beginning. Let's start when you were a little girl. Talk to me about your first memories and what those were like. And
All right. Well, the interesting thing I think about learning your story is when you look back in your past, you see it different now that you've been able to open your eyes to it. And so it kind of makes you feel a little less than, because when you're looking back as a child, you're seeing it from the outside now, knowing when I was in it, I was alone and scared. I had a mom who mentally abused me. And I was telling Carrie that sometimes it's harder when you're mentally abused because you don't have the physical look or that specific point where your life changed. It's your normalcy, your whole life. And then when you finally come out of it and you realize that's not right, your whole past is sort of questioned, like, did I like purple or was I told to like purple? What birthday party did you have? I don't know. It was told to me, but it was normal going through it. And so as a child, I spent a lot of time in my bedroom, and I played grocery store to an age that I think we probably would have made fun of me if we knew. And one of the movies that I used to watch on VHS was Can't Buy Me Love. And it was just someone different who wanted to fit in. And sort of unbeknownst to me, that was all I wanted. And I would pray as a little girl. We weren't very religious, but I would pray, when I come out, please let it be different. Not knowing what different was, just knowing I wanted it to stop. And it never did. So I definitely walked away from religion and just became jaded and angry. And the only way you could get love in my family was if you did whatever my mother, the matriarch, wanted, and at any cost to yourself. You know, if food hurt your tummy, you ate it because it made her happy, and then you would get love from her. And she loved for us to be sick. That was her thing, because then she could go around telling the neighborhood, oh, I was there for them and I took care of them and stuff. So as a child, I definitely thought something was wrong, but I didn't know until later on in life when I sat through therapy and would look back and they would help me and stuff. And I went to therapists actually from a very young age, and I loved it because it was the one person who validated me. And I think it sort of backfired on my mom because I was one of the only ones who went to therapy, and out of my family, I'm the only one who has walked away. And there was always a pivotal point with the therapist that she wanted us all to sit down, and then I would never see that therapist again.
Wow.
And then we would go to another one, and then I would grow to love that one. And then there would be a point where she wanted my mom and dad to come sit down, or my sisters, and then we would never see that one again. So therapy was a very safe place for me. I was easily open to walking into one and stuff. So I'm very grateful for that, because I believe that we should all, not be afraid to go to therapy for any reason, even if you're not getting along with your husband or something, it's important for sometimes another person to be able to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's quite a few different ways that you could find some type of therapy. You could find, a mentor,
right.
Just any kind of like a program, just something. You should have, it doesn't matter how perfect you feel your life is. Everybody can benefit from having somebody help them see their life from a different perspective, or, and just help guide them in maybe some little spots in their life that they're feeling obstacles with. So, and then definitely for people who have had trauma in their life, and it sounds like yours started from day one. And you touched a little bit on mental abuse, and then you also kind of touched a little bit on your mom enjoying you being sick. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Did those two go hand in hand?
It's a really tough thing for me to say, because I have been told by doctors or, sorts that my family struggles with Munchausen's disease. My one sister has Munchausen's for herself. One is you inflict it on yourself, and then one is by proxy. I truly believe that my mother had Munchausen's by proxy and mentally kept me and my sisters mentally sick. In younger years in school, it was always like the teachers were like, oh, poor Debbie. And they would sit me around a table and tell me how wonderful I was and how wonderful my family was. And so I assumed I was really bullied throughout my life. And I think it was just her helping to feed into that so that she could look good in front of the teachers and be the woman who saved us. It's a crummy disease because no doctor will ever actually diagnose you, because if they did and something literally did happen, they could get medical malpractice. So it is a real disease out there. It wasn't until later in my life that I learned about it, because my sister she goes as far as getting cancer and telling people. And to go back to the disease, it's not a hypochondriac. They study their diagnosis so well. And when you're in a doctor's office for only like 15 minutes and you're hitting all the points and you're just explaining it so well, there is a point where a medical professional is going to believe you, and they will go as far as getting brain surgeries and stuff. And they know they don't have it, but they feed off of the attention from it. And it is a mental disease. So with my sister having Munchausen's, that was what brought it all to my head that something's up with my family. There's something different, and I'm different from them. I was told by a head neurologist in New York that my sister had Munchausen's. And
How old were you when that happened?
This was probably like 3 or 4 years ago.
Wow. So you went your whole life not realizing this.
No, not at all. I mean, I went my whole life sort of introducing myself. Hi, my name's Debbie, and I'm depressed.
Wow.
Because that's all I knew. I was on antidepressant since I was 12. I was the kid who never went back to high school to talk to my high school friends because I thought I was bullied and depressed, and I was just the person who lived with depression every single day. But when I would be away from my family, I wasn't depressed. So I don't understand. Could really college have made it that great, or being away? And it was getting to college and meeting 3 other girls who openly spoke to me and said, "You're being abused." Because when we were in college, not to name, it was like a hot second ago, right? We didn't have cell phones or Facebook. We had answering machines. Mm-hmm. And so my mother did not fail to leave her messages on the answering machine.
Like what? What do you mean?
It's very manipulative. If you sent I was, explaining that tomorrow's my birthday. And so I'm doing this so I can rid all of this.
We love this. And first of all, we do want to pause you and let you know, like, we see you and we honor you. Like, this is super hard for you to talk about this because, you've talked to both of us about how your birthday was something that was really painful every year. Your mom really did ruin that for you. So to come out and talk about this bravely, with nervousness and knots in your stomach and wanting to just turn around and go, no, I don't want to do this, but yet you're here and you're doing it. We see how hard this is, and we just want to honor you and let you know, like, you're fucking strong.
Yeah, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what it is. When you live through trauma, there is a point.
It's okay.
That
tears.
You just need to go to the scary day or the scariness and just be like, no more, more, and I'm going to be 42 tomorrow. I only realized all of this when I turned 40. So my 40s are turning out to be pretty good because I'm bringing things. It does affect, obviously, every one of us. It affects us so deeply every single day. And it's almost like you have to wake up every day and remind yourself, no, they're not going to get in your head, and birthdays were really hard. I mean, if you didn't say you liked the gift to her liking, she berated you all day long. Did you like it? We can return it. I mean, if you don't want it, we can return it. And I find myself doing some of that to my kids, and so worried about, like, am I overdoing it? Am I underdoing it? Because I don't have that role model to look back at. And so if I sent a Father's Day card, or I was in college and I failed to call, on a birthday or an anniversary, I mean, the answering machine messages were just, that I was horrible and that I'm selfish and that, and I remember my sister, when I came home from college once, we went to go out and have some drinks, and she introduced me to her friends. This is my sister, Debbie. She's extremely selfish and only talks about herself. I was like, oh, I must do that. Oh, okay. I should probably not do that. And when I would come back, like, my friends were like, you would sit on the phone with your family and we would only hear you go, uh-huh. Oh, okay. Like, they're like, they never asked you. So I know that I don't talk about myself that much because these 3 college roommates that I have, if you were to sit my mother down right now, we've been friends since 1994. They've been in my life. I've been to all their weddings, their kids, they've been to my weddings. My mother has no idea what their names are.
Wow.
She just doesn't. But if, gosh forbid, I didn't know one thing about her life and what she was doing, and it was just, if I sent a gift and I didn't send a card, it was, you didn't send a card. Why didn't you send a card? Because I didn't have $3 to spend on the card, but I sent a gift, you know? And so then it would just take away the whole thought of the gift. And so birthdays and most holidays are not fun for me, even giving gifts, because I just have this like pressure on me of just such silliness, right? You know, like I'll just take a hug, you know, just a hug, or a, hey, it's your birthday, let's go get ice cream, you know, like it doesn't have to be about the gift and the stress and it has to be the perfect color. And Mother's Day was just the worst. It was the worst. And she would not do anything on Mother's Day. She would sit and you had to, you know, sort of
Wait on her
hand and foot. And the gifts had to be like one up. Everybody one up somebody. It was such pressure, you know, and at the end of the night, she would tell you whether it was good or bad. So I spent my whole life wanting. I just wanted that mom, you know? And she was there and everyone else thought she was that mom, but behind closed doors. But I thought it was me. You know, I was broken. I couldn't keep a boyfriend. I never had like that best friend because I was the broken one. You know, I was the sad, depressed girl who locked herself in her room, played groceries, and watched Can't Buy Me Love, you know?
I'll hang out with you.
Sounds like fun.
I know. I want to play that.
It's hard. And I'll tell you why, because the stories I thought were real, now I question every one of them. I have to talk more sort of after the fact, but talk about my past, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it was my 20th high school reunion, and I decided to go back. And I went back home, and I was sitting in the kitchen, and I was telling my mom how I didn't want to see these kids and all the stuff that they did to me. And I could bet you $1 million right now she told me all these stories. These were my stories. This was my past. Mm-hmm. And she literally reneged on everything. And I'm sitting there, you know, 30-something years old, looking at her like, wait, that didn't really happen? No, Debbie, you have no idea what you're talking about. Who told you that? And I'd be like, you did for the last, that's just insane. And so it became sort of a mind bleep in my mind, because I was like, am I really that screwed up that you know, there were stories that I got into a car accident, as most of us do in high school. And my mother told me that the family sued them and that's the reason why they went to college, and that my parents had to pay all this money. And that was all I knew from, you know, high school on. Now it's 20 years later. My mom's like, that never happened. It started then where my past started becoming so confusing. Like I was like, there's a story that she told me all the time that a girl had a roller rink birthday party. And when my mom drove me up to the party, the place was empty. And she took me out for ice cream. She used to remind me of the story all the time. Oh, gosh. And she used to tell me how sad she was that the girls were so mean to me and that they invited me to this birthday party and that it wasn't really there. And I kid you not, but it never happened. And that's because I'm talking to these friends now, 20 years later, and they're like, I never saw you like that. I've always wanted to be your friend. Debbie, your mom was crazy. Like everyone saw it except for me. And
wow.
To not have a past is really painful, because my daughter asks me, Mommy, what did you do when you were little? Or what did you want to be for Halloween? Or I don't know any of it now.
Yeah.
I can't look at her and tell her anything of it. And she doesn't understand. And I'm mad, you know, because for you to start this new part of your life, you want to put your past behind you. But when you don't even know what your past is, and if it wasn't to her expectation, then she shut you out. And that's what she's done. She shut me out. So
So she's made up stories your whole life about things that have happened to you or things that people have done to you and all this trauma that you've been through that didn't happen. And
To make her look good.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's even, I mean, I'm not quite sure, but it sounds a lot like narcissism, and that she definitely had, you know, that perfectionism. She needed to have everything look perfect. Is that?
Oh, yeah.
Is that like?
I mean,
you
my
know, go
sister
hand in
was
hand with
not
childhood?
my dad's child, and I didn't find that out until high school. They lied about their anniversary so that it made it look like he was hers. And quite honestly, he was hers, her dad, since she was 2, and she's 6 years older than me. So I would have never known any different. Like, who cares, right? Like, she's been in my life. That's her dad. Like, good, let's go. They hid it so that she could be perfect, you know, her whole life. And then it came out, and when you hear what her story was, it's not really that bad of a story, you know, and it's actually quite a beautiful story. Like, I'm proud of her for doing what she did. I think I'm really happy to know that I did have a sister who didn't leave me every weekend. And then, because I have 2 older sisters, you know, but one, we didn't have to split because of the choices my mom made. So I think she should have embraced that, you know, and when I told her how proud I was, she's just very shut off from it because she doesn't want anyone to know that there's an imperfection. And my older sister is still very much close to her, and she's still doing it to her. So it makes it very clear for me now, as the Debbie now, than the little girl in the room, to be able to see what she does, watch it from afar, and see my niece and nephew kind of go through it, where you just want to scream, like, get them out. So my older sister still feeds into my mom's Munchausen. I think there are definite pieces to my sister. My nephew was on Zoloft, and we were all at a restaurant. She just screams across the table to his name, you know, did you take your Zoloft? You need to take your Zoloft. Don't forget to take your Zoloft. Sometimes he doesn't take his Zoloft. He needs to take his Zoloft. Don't forget to take your Zoloft. And I'm sitting there like, not the time or place.
Yeah.
So they feed off of letting everyone know, you know, so she sort of does that with my mom, not in these words, but definitely felt this way my whole life. And my sister, I know her and I have felt our whole life that my mom wishes she stopped at my older sister. And it's pretty clear. And she has what she has now. She has her dream now. She has her, that's good, and that's where she's at. And they feed off one another, and it works. And I don't want to turn this into a whole, you know, like, against her, you know. I believe that she has her issues, and I believe anyone that does do things to people needs their sort of help. But I wasn't breaking the cycle. When I had my daughter, I did everything to her that my mom did to me. And if it wasn't for my husband, who I'm with now, who helped me break that, and we had to put her through therapy, and she's only 11, and she's seen and heard things that I wish I could take back, but I'm breaking the cycle now.
So fucking powerful, woman.
Yeah.
So powerful. Do you see that? Because I can feel that you have this remorse for how you, at the earlier years of raising her, but you didn't know anything else at all. And thank God you had a husband that went, no. But you know what? There's plenty of people that have husbands that say no, and they continue to do it. Yeah. So yes, it's beautiful that your husband was able to see and say something to you. But fuck, woman, for you to be able to open up your eyes and go, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, she was the best blessing. I mean, in fact, when I found out we were pregnant with her, I would not find out if she was a girl or a boy because I desperately could not have a girl because I didn't know how to have that mother-daughter relationship. And we didn't find out. And when she came out and she was a girl, I actually had postpartum. Yeah. I couldn't connect, you know, and it was her She was placed in my world to get me away from her.
How do you snap out of it?
Yeah. Because to see her face and to see her fear when I questioned everything she was doing, you know, do you want to go to McDonald's or Burger King? She said Burger King. Are you sure you want to go to Burger King? Because we can still go to McDonald's. Do you want to go to McDonald's? And she would be like, I don't even know. Where do you want me to go?
So much stress.
And to see her, I saw my child. I saw me in her trying to be like, wherever you want to go, Mom, let's just go where you want to go so you're happy, because I just need you to be happy. Yeah. And when I started seeing her do that for me, I was like, oh my gosh, that is what I did that's what I'm doing right now, you know? And when I would go back to my parents with my children, the chain that went was make my mom happy at whatever cost to my children and Brad. So I would go into the bedroom and be like, you guys have to be quiet because I need to make sure grandma's happy, because I would get the wrath from her. And then so I would just put the fear in them because I had the fear in me. And it was just the worst cycle. And so I see the cycle that people can get in, and it is a comfort. It's your norm.
Yeah.
Getting out of the cycle is scary because it's not your norm. And it's like being on a ledge, you know, and you have nothing there. And family is so hard to be the trauma because it's all we know. And I know that we all grow and get married and have these new nuclear families, but when you take your past, you sort of feel so like, holy cow, I just got shot out of a cannon and I don't know where I'm landing, but I'm just going to do it. It's kind of nice to be shoved in that cannon because you can feel all your sides, even though you're cramped and you're tired, you know, hot and stuff. So I know it's silly. I'll lighten it up a little bit here.
That's awesome.
When I was younger, it was normal, you know. It wasn't until I sat with therapists who'd be like, do you realize that's not normal? And then I would be like, oh. So for a while, you know, my mom stayed at home and did odds and end jobs. But when I was little, she used to have a video recorder or a cassette recorder. And she would leave me a message on the cassette recorder. I would record my message to her, and it was in attempt to her connecting with me, because if she was working late or she was doing an odd and end job while I was home or whatnot, but she would then use them against me. I didn't know that until I sat in front of a therapist and would tell them. And then she would be like, that's manipulating. That's holding control over all of your words. That's her being able to throw your words literally back in your face. And that's what would happen. As a young child, you may say to your kid or your mom, oh, I didn't say that. And, you know, they're kids, right? Yeah. You know, we don't remember everything we say, or maybe we say it, but we don't even really know that those words exactly mean that. I mean, she would rip the recorder out and be like, no, you did not. You said exactly these words, you know, and you just... So a lot of the feelings I had were, oh, it's so hard sometimes to talk about this. It's when you want love so bad, and when you finally get it, it feels icky. Yeah. It feels dirty, kind of, you know, you had to sell yourself in order to get it. I cannot tell you how many times I had to apologize when I knew I was right. And not for the lack of being right or not, but, you know, oh, you're right, Mom. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said it like that. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me? Mom, I'm so sorry. And then the next day, did you forgive me? I'm so sorry. I have to watch myself. I get so angry sometimes. I'm so you had to find the right word. Sometimes I'm tired, or, you know what, Mom, I'm just really depressed and I'm trying to fight through it. And then that would be her thing. You are depressed. And this is why you do say these things. And she would find the one thing. Mm-hmm. But quite honestly, it was right then and there, it was the love. The fight was over. I got my mommy back. I found the right words. I pleased her. Okay, good. We can go a few more days. Mm. And it's scary to talk about this now too, because I always thought I'd never speak about it until she was passed. Mm. And I've always I'm going to say something that maybe a lot of people think, but no one says it, and maybe nobody thinks it. But I look forward to the day when she's passed because she's truly going to see me. Yeah. That's when she's going to see me. That's when she's going to say, oh, she wasn't that crazy person. Because I would question all the time, if I'm so depressed and crazy and psycho, like, why do I have so many friends? Why do people stay in touch with me? Why am I in weddings? Why am I a hairdresser and people come back to me? They can go to anyone, you know?
A damn good one.
Yeah.
We like our hair. We love our hair.
So it was questions like that I was like, when she goes away, she's going to be up there and she's going to be looking, and that is when she's going to truly see me. And I think a lot of people probably feel that way. I mean, I would think so, right? You know, I mean, it's never gonna, I don't feel like the pain is gonna go away until she's gone.
You're being very brave by doing this. Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like when you interact with other people and you get in that similar kind of a conflict, do you do the same thing with other people, or was it only with your mom?
That's such a good question. And it's so, really, honestly, my entire life up until about 40, you know, when I was in therapy and I was basically throwing up, and she said, you have to say you're abused. And I couldn't say it. I was like, I can't say it. Every friend that I became close with mimicked my mom to a T.
Oh, yeah.
And then I would get my heart broken and Brad would just pick me up off the floor. Every single friend. And so I pick them now. But I learned... I think I'm right across from me. Or maybe I don't, because
I mean, I them.
We are kind of cool. We're like the best.
Pay you. For the best. To be our
We do
friend.
pay you, actually. So I guess wait, are we friends? Damn it.
Yeah, so I was taught that I love really hard because I want it so bad. So when I find a friend and that friend is hard for me to get the love, it's like a conquer for me, because if I can turn them, then it's like turning my mom. Or at least that's what I paid my therapist to tell me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it made sense.
Your therapist has some wise words. I mean, that's...
Yeah.
So when did you feel a shift then in the type of friends that you were attracting in your life? Was it when you had that realization, oh my God, my mom has Munchausen?
Yes. My year when I turned 40 was probably the most eye-opening year. And I looked back at all my past and saw, oh yeah, they're exactly like that person, you know, and how funny is it that they make my tummy feel just like she does, you know, and she did and everything. And that the ones who really did love me, I kind of pushed away because it was weird. It was icky. It didn't seem right. You know,
familiar.
No, and it's very hard.
Normal
Yeah.
was very, very sick and twisted.
Yeah, and it's very hard too. I have some friends going through some pretty hard times right now, and I was sort of looking back on it to my husband and said, "It's so funny. When friends are going through a hard time, I retreat because my mother was the person who was knocking down their door with gifts and food and making sure everyone knew that she was the one, you know, and I don't even know how to make dinner for them because I'm like, I don't want to be that person, you know? So there's this really weird abusiveness inside of me that I so badly don't want to be here that I'm nothing. The other thing that happens with people with Munchausen's, going back to a question you had asked earlier, feelings and people that might not know, is we tend to never go to the doctor. We have to be at a 11 to a 20 in order to go, because I'll be danged. Can we say damned?
Damn. You can say fuck.
Oh,
you
good.
can say
Okay.
shit.
I'll be damned if I'm going to go into a doctor and they're going to tell me I'm okay. Oh, no, because then I'm crazy. I'm just like her, you know, I'm just like them. So I have had, you know, kidney stones to the point of explosion. I've had, you know, like things that you just wait. So I've learned that children of Munchausen's, because like I said, it's hard. There are books out there. I mean, even Dr. Phil did a thing on it once.
people haven't been able to really come out about it because they've been so brainwashed into thinking, no, this is the way of life, like you did for
Right.
40 years of your life. You thought that was normal. Some people go their entire life.
And it's hard as a provider. So I've seen it in my practice. It is very taboo. How do you report that? And in what way?
It's
This is
crazy.
it.
Yeah. And a
What do
lot
we
of
do?
times it's mental too. So, there was a case of a young girl who the mom kept her in a wheelchair. Do you remember that? And she ended up killing her.
We don't see any of the physical stuff. It's
the
mental stuff.
And it's
you're
so
like,
sad that for the
can't.
kid, the only way we get love
Yeah.
is to feed into it.
Yeah.
So you almost don't know how to love. Like
No.
when you're done, you don't know. I put a lot of pain on my husband for years because what pain I took after I hung up the phone with my mom that I couldn't yell at her because I needed her love. She was my mom, right? I would just throw it all up on him. I mean, he shouldn't even be sitting next to me, well, he's not sitting next to me, but you know what I mean? We're not, no one can see us.
So here's my question about that is, we attract people into our lives that we're familiar with. So all of a sudden you have Brad in your life. So how did you perceive that situation? Because you attracted friends in your life that mirrored your mom.
Yeah, that is probably the one question in my life that I truly believe in a higher power because not only should he not be in my life or I shouldn't have found him, he shouldn't be still here. And he's taken a beating. It's 21 years and he has his story, not like mine, but we both have our, family issues. And sometimes I always say it's so crazy that we both don't have grandparents for the kids, but maybe that's why we were supposed to be there. I think he's learned to be a person through watching it. It was definitely hard. He stopped going to visit them, but I just think he knew. I mean, I wish I'd love to ask him. I think he knew I just wanted to be loved from my mom and my dad. He said it very good a couple of years ago, which was definitely something. He said, "You're mourning the family you never had." Mm-hmm. And that is literally, I wanted that family on television. And again, it's what everyone outside thought I had. So again, it was a mind fuck because I was like, you all think that this is, but this is not what's going on. And yet I didn't want to ever throw my family under the bus because I loved that people thought that. Going back to what my turning point was, my college roommates and I decided to go to Chicago for my 40th birthday. It was November 3rd, we left. And it just so happened that the Chicago Cubs won the World Series on my 40th birthday.
Oh my God, of course.
And we were flying into
Because of your
town.
birthday.
And I know my girls will listen to this one day, but they didn't have a clue. They're like, what's going on? I'm like, the Cubs won the World Series.
Yeah, that's
I'm
nice.
pretty sure one of them was like, what is that?
That would be me.
Nice for the margarita.
I was like, that would be the baseball game that was played on television that the whole world watched.
What's baseball?
But we went into, exactly. Sea of blue and all we are in red and green shirts. And it was pretty good. But we had all got back to the Airbnb and asked if we, had some wine and we started talking and we were catching up. And they asked me, how's your mom? How's it going? And I started talking and my one girlfriend who is very open to not being a fan of her, just, with her wine glass was like, oh my gosh, you've been telling the same story for 20 years. And she's like, nothing's changed. And we went about the whole weekend and I was like, she is so right.
Yeah.
I have been telling the same thing that keeps happening to me for 20 years with them and then some in my own life. Oh my gosh. Well, that was the last time I've ever spoken to my mother. That was the point where I was like, I am not doing this anymore. And that's when I came home and went to therapy hardcore. And so that was the last time. And even on the plane ride, if you could read the text messages, that's what I should have done. Had you guys read all the text messages, you really could have gotten a good glimpse into what the craziness is. Because
what story were you telling them that night with your glass of wine? What story was the same for 20 years?
So, okay, I'll tell you the story. This was the breaking point, and this is basically the encompass of my 40 years. If I come home from Arizona to New York and I go to visit my family, it was always when it was good for my sister. You know, it was like, well, I'm flying across the United States. Nobody has a job but me.
Right.
But it was like, well, and you would call and say, okay, I'm going to come this day and this day. And she's like, well, Christy was going to do her laundry on Thursday. So could you come like the following week? Yeah, it was like crazy. So that was like always normal, you know. Even the day of my wedding, my sister wanted me to move back my pictures because our son needed to take a nap. And I was like, yeah, it's not going to work like that.
Wow.
So we always go into New York City, you know, spend the night there or whatever. And it was the summer. And at first my sister was going to go, then she wasn't going to go. And then the kids, they were going to do this and that. And they were just finishing school. And it was just like, okay, whenever we go, we go. And it was right around close to Rory's birthday. And for whatever reason, my little daughter thinks going to Macy's is the coolest thing ever. So I was like, okay, we'll go to Macy's. So we got to the city. We walked around. We went to Central Park. And my sister said, I could tell my mom was getting tired. You know, she's tired and I still needed to protect her. Always have to protect her, you know? And so I said, we should probably head back and go get something to eat. Do you guys want to get something to eat? And so within seconds, my mother was like, she just started yelling at me. She's like, well, you said you were hungry. And I didn't know that we were hungry, but we're hungry. And I was like, okay, well, it's 6:00. So it's probably a good time to leave the zoo and, you know, head to go get some food. So we went to go get food and they always sit them four, my sister, my mom, and my niece and nephew. And then it's like always me and my kids, you know? And so I had a stroller for Sawyer still because he was still little. Well, it was only 2 or 3 years ago, but New York City's a big thing to walk around. So I'm like struggling in with this, you know, and we sit down and we get some food and we go back to the hotel. And I had upgraded the hotel room because, again, I'm always the one to try to make everybody better, you know, like. And it turned out that the hotel room wasn't really a suite with a bathroom. It was sort of a little different. So I had told them, I was like, is this okay? Are you guys okay? And my sister's like, I'm going to take the master with the bathroom. My niece was going to sleep on the couch. And then me and my mom, we're going to take the two queen beds with my kids. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to take Rory to Macy's. And my mom's like, well, you know, your niece and nephew, they never get to go to a hotel. Like, they just want to go to the hotel. They just want to have fun in the hotel. I'm like, okay, great. You guys hang in the hotel. I'm going to take Rory to Macy's. So I go to Macy's with Rory, and lo and behold, there's my sister and my niece.
What?
I'm like, what's going on? So she's like, mommy went and took the boys to Kmart to get them a toy. The very next day, we were going to the Lego store. So it's like 10:30 at night, okay? And my little guy, I know, is going to be tired. And he's very anal retentive. So I go we walk the blocks to Kmart, and my mom wants to get him a sword, but the swords keep breaking, and they're not lighting up. And so he's literally having a temper tantrum in the middle of Kmart. And I'm like, why are we even here? And I'm like, this is crazy. My mother just loses it on me in the middle of Kmart. You know what? Whatever, Debbie. Whatever. And she just leaves. So we go into the hotel and my niece can't sleep on the bed. And so I go into the bedroom and my mom is crying, telling my sister that I am horrible, that I am the worst child, that I'm selfish, and that I'm basically a bitch. And I was like, I cannot even, and this was the first time I yelled back at them. I'm like, I have been home for everything, through the army, through everything. I have never missed a day of the life of your kids. I've been to their baptisms, their birthdays. I surprised them on the Sweet 16. I'm like, for you to even say that because my kid is tired and I thought we were going to sleep, I'm like, this is insane. The next thing I know is my kids are tired and they're crying and they just want to sleep both with mommy. So I ask my sister, can I sleep on the queen or the king and you and them take the queen? They say no. My sister, the next thing I know, there's a cot coming in from one of the, bellboys, and they all go into the master bedroom. And I'm embarrassed to tell you the rest of this story because it's pretty insane. So me, Rory, and Sawyer are in this little like the other room. And Rory says, Mommy, I have to go to the bathroom. So I go to knock on the master because the bathroom is in there. They locked us out. So Rory and I peed in a garbage can.
Oh, wow.
So, I'm really doing this. I'm doing this
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Okay, I'm doing this. Yeah. So the three of us slept together on a queen. The next morning we woke up. No one spoke to us. We walked through the city. They walked like miles ahead of us. I had the stroller. I had the suitcase. And at one point, my nephew had to go to the bathroom. So I was like, hey, there's a deli down here. And no one would respond. So we ended up going into Disney. And you know how the Disney always has the people there that help open the door? Well, they all walked in and then the door slammed on my stroller. So the lady came over and said, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so sorry that woman just slammed the door on you. I'm like, well, what's even more embarrassing is it's my mom, my sister, and my niece. But thanks. So we went in and then we were in Penn Station. So anyone who's listening and knows Penn Station, when you're waiting for your train to flip, everybody's staring at what track it's going to be on. And then when the track hits, it's like, I don't even know. It's like bees coming at you. It's not even like a herd of cows. It's like crazy. They left me. And so I had the stroller, the two kids' hands, and my suitcase. And so I got onto the railroad, which is the Long Island Railroad. And that was the day I knew my daughter was traumatized because she cried harder than any 9-year-old should ever cry because she knew. She knew better than I did. And my mother tried to they were like a couple of carts down. And I wish she never saw me because she would have never known if we made on it. But she did see me, so she moved. So Rory and I stood and just held each other. And Sawyer was in the car seat. And she kicked us out. And almost every July for at least 8 or 9 years, at some point, she would kick us out of the house.
What?
And so Rory, me, and Sawyer would have to find a hotel. And so going back to my high school reunion, that 40th reunion, Brad had flown back home to go to work. But then she kicked us out. So I had to call Brad from a taxi cab, which isn't taxi cabs. It's like finding a taxi in Anthem. Like you just don't find them where we live. And so Brad flew overnight, paid an obscene amount of money to come to me in the hotel. And I was just crying. And then I went to the 40th reunion with friends 20th. And 20th. Yep. Mm-hmm, yep. Thank God.
You're not that
right?
old.
Yeah. Woo, I look good. So, yeah, it was a lot of abuse in the sense that I still put myself there, because I wanted to be loved.
Did you hope every single year that she wouldn't kick you out that year?
I hope still to this day that she wouldn't kick me out. I hope every single morning when I wake up that she'll wake up because I want to love her. I want a mom. I want a grandma. I want to talk about past. I want to sit around the kitchen table and break bread, I will want that for the rest of my life. I will go to my grave wanting that. And I will never understand why I got chosen not to have that. And that is something I'm going to have to come okay with. I don't understand why me, and I think anyone feels that way with trauma, and it sucks when you really can't answer that. You have to just be okay with it. I'm not 100% there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're so amazing and beautiful.
You
and
guys
your
are so
story
sweet.
is beautiful.
You said that when you were 40 years old, that's when you decided, I'm not talking to her anymore. What was the experience that made you go, nope, not doing it?
So right after that experience, I left from New York. I left. My mom called me, and that's from July until I turned 40. So from July until November.
She didn't call you.
This was
until
calling.
November.
No, this was calling nonstop. And she was
She was
telling
calling
me,
you nonstop?
yeah. And she was telling me she wasn't going to take sides, but that I was horrible and I needed to apologize to my sister.
And what were you thinking?
I was thinking, this is it. This is my
Yeah.
life. It's always
I'd
me
be like,
apologizing.
Bye.
And that very day when I got home from New York, my father has never spoke to me since then. Has never said, he's never even called and said, so it's a good thing for me and Brad, because I was like, if I ever get into a fight with the kids, you call and find out your side of the story. Because he has never called me to be like, what happened? You know? And my mother told me I chose selfishness over apologizing to my sister. And she would stop at nothing until I apologized. So we would text. And the texts were literally, I mean, I still have them on my phone. I do. They are literally me saying, please, let's just stop this. I just want to put all this behind us. I'm proud of you guys for being my parents. I love you guys. Could we just, start over again? The text after would be like her yelling at me for like something I didn't do for my dad's birthday in October. And it was like, after talking to my friends and then quite honestly handing my text to my therapist, and her dissecting them with me and being like, this is crazy. Like, you're literally saying, I'm sorry, please let's stop. But I'm not going to call my sister, It was the texts and it was the Rory in the train. She won't go back there ever again. Like, I went back in February 2 years ago with just Rory for a baby shower, and we stayed in an Airbnb, and it was really scary for me, but I was like, I'm going to show her we can go back to Long Island, even though we don't have to go see them. And it was just her and I in the car. We would rent, we'd drive. The stories she would tell me that my mom did to her were, total manipulative. And she's so cute because she's like, Mom, I knew if I gave Grandma like a certain look, like that I was disappointed, she would give me more because she was trying to buy her love. And she would tell Rory all the time, your mom is sick and she's always depressed and, you could always call me. And like, I went through a lot of anger and I still do. Anger, sad, mad, depressed. Like, I don't know that I'm depressed. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm angered that I have to have this story.
Our healing is like an onion. You're constantly peeling away new layers. And it's not linear. It's very circular. We can come back to certain experiences, but just at a different level. But it feels like, fuck,
Deeper.
why do I keep going back to this? To spiral
Yeah, I
in our
love
healing.
that.
It feels like we're not getting anywhere, but we are.
Right.
Because we're diving deeper into who we really are. And we're reclaiming those parts of ourselves that we have forgotten and that we never really realized were there. And so as we heal and go deeper and deeper within ourselves, then we find the beauty and the treasure that's down there.
Right.
That's deep within ourselves.
I think another thing that people shouldn't be afraid of is to think that we're just bitching, we all have our days with our moms and our dads, It's when your days with your moms and your dad, you question it and it feels so icky and everything, because like I said, there's not that one specific time. It's just so much on top of it, and you can put that onion aside and be like, I'm not going to peel that because and the normal of the abuse seems so warm.
It seems so familiar.
Yeah.
And that's what we return to. We return to what feels familiar, even though it's not necessarily right or good. It's what we know.
Yeah.
And so it feels safe because it's familiar.
And sometimes I would try to go back and be my own self to her. But when you're in it so deep, sometimes you just can't have that in your life and you have to walk away from it. And I think that's another thing. I think people think like, I'll go back and be different, If you can't go back and be different, then don't go back anymore, And it's okay. It's okay to do that. And there are more and more stories of people that I hear that don't speak to their parents and stuff. And so that's interesting, I don't want that to happen to my kids.
You touched a little bit on how why me? why did I get this mom? Why did I get this life? But have you ever thought maybe you possibly chose that experience because you wanted to feel the contrast of what it was like to not have a mother love you the way that you wanted, so that you could know that so like to its ultimate core and depth, so that you could be the opposite for your children and you could break the cycle. That possibly her mom did it to her and their grandma's mom did it to, you know.
I have thought about that. Yeah.
Back. And that obviously it's going along with your sisters, you know, or your sister. And that you are here to break the cycle.
That's good. I like it, but I would have liked to choose someone else.
I know.
Today.
Absolutely.
Someone else break whatever cycle they're going to break.
No, yeah.
But it helps
and
to
I
give,
do,
like-
I do think a lot of times we do find so much joy, if you will, in how we can bring up our kids, you know, because we have so many conversations. Like, if I ever fight with my kids, you make sure you call and you get the idea too. You know, like, who would ever really have that conversation if you didn't have that pain or whatnot? It is interesting though when you see the person who does trauma to you still living their life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Still going about their days and stuff, you know?
Do you
and
ever hear from your mom? Does she try and contact you anymore?
so I'm blocked her on all, you know, forms, but she could connect with me on Facebook, but she hasn't. She does little things, which again, I don't want it to sound like I'm bitching, but like they are the big things. Rory's birthday was in August and she sent a check. And the funny thing is most people would be like, oh, wow, your mom reached out and sent you a check. No, the check has so much to it because the check is, they cashed it. Look, everyone, they cashed it. She cashed it. Or she never even cashed it. See, I sent a check and she never even cashed it. It had nothing to do with my daughter. It had nothing to do with her birthday. It all had to do with her manipulating me.
So what, did you cash it?
No, we rip it up. There's so many little things like that that we're open to now, Brad and I. And he's proud of me when I open them and I'm like, this is not at all for Rory. This is my test. And he's just like, good for you, you know? So those things I see and I feel bad for her now. You know, I do feel sad that she's gonna be like that. I often wonder if I could talk to my grandmother.
Yeah.
And I want to know, is she on, I don't want to say my side or her side, but where does she stand, you know?
Did your mother ever talk about her mother? Do you think
I knew
abuse
my
came
grandmother.
from-
She passed on when I was in college. So I had her very much in my life. And it's funny, I was very close to her. My grandmother painted like Bob Ross.
Yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah,
Bob
yeah,
Ross?
yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I used to go over there and we would have soup and butter,
Yeah.
saltine crackers, and we would paint together and I would sleep there. And it's so funny. She's like, oh, well, Christy did that all the time to my older sister. I'm like, oh, she never did. Like, only me and grandma did that, you know? And so she definitely tells stories that I just, no, her and my grandmother were close. She definitely took, but you know what? My mother was the controller of my grandmother. She did
Interesting.
everything.
So your mother was manipulating both her mother and her children.
Yeah, I guess so. I never really even thought about that. So I definitely love to talk to her and see, will she come through? And if she doesn't, then that's because she's like, you're wrong.
So
I'm on her side.
what about your dad?
Yeah, so he is probably the one that hurts me the most. And he's probably the hardest one to talk about because I followed in his footsteps. I joined the Army. He was my hero, you know. He's an only child. He grew up in a very odd family. And his mother's name was Margaret, and they used to call her Aunt Motts. And so she became Boss. So that was my grandmother's name, Boss. It was really weird. And she was very like prim and proper. Like when you went, you ate, and you always ate ham. So I will never eat a warm ham because we always had ham at our house.
Yeah, that's like
And it was-
Indian roast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh, yeah. And it was like 2 p.m, and you would sit and you would have to dress for dinner and stuff. So he was very prim and proper. He wasn't very close to his mom. I don't know any of my grandpas. I was 2 when one passed away, and I don't even think I was born when the other one was. So
That's interesting.
he's a quiet man. He likes NASCAR, and he's a mechanic, and he's very clean in his garage. And I think he enjoyed that my mom, we were her projects. She left him alone. So when I think we all started walking away from her, he was like, she's annoying me, like we've had this nice little life over here and she did this. And you'd always ask my dad, like, what are you doing this weekend? Well, whatever the boss tells us, like it was whatever she did. So I definitely.
So your mom became the boss.
Oh, my mother is the boss.
It sounds like he's scared of her.
And that's it. I think he would never reach out to me because, and I've said if he were to pass before my mom, and then my mom would try to reach out to me in a good, she came to a holy Jesus moment, you know what I mean? Then I would probably give her the time of day, maybe. I don't know. But if my mom were to pass and he were to reach out to me, I would give him 2 fingers because he did not find himself or, stand on his own. And I mean, for the love of God, call me and ask me what happened. I literally walked out of your life and you have never had a conversation with me. And there's so many layers. I mean, I paid their cell phones for years. And then I paid it for years after until finally one day, I think it was like last year, Brad's like, I just found out your parents aren't on our cell phone anymore. They left the plan and I have been paying. Can you imagine your kids aren't speaking to you and you're still using cell phones that somebody else is paying? But Brad would tell me every month, he's like, please let me. And I'm like, no, you can't. Cause they still held this sense over me that I had to take care of them and stuff. Nothing from him. Wow. Nothing. He's probably to me the biggest piece of shit on the face of the earth.
So when you were a kid, he just kind of went along with it and smiled and nodded his head?
So when I was a kid, I definitely loved my dad. Like he was, the worker, the provider. He was always tired, but he was there at our soccer games, But now as an adult, I realize it was my mom who put all that in our heads. And I would always be like, Daddy never asks me about us. Well, he does. He does all the time. When we go to bed, he asks me how you guys are doing. And I remember in my heart as a kid thinking, that's nice, but I wish he'd ask me, Yeah. But I thought, oh, that's great. That must be how a marriage is. The man comes home, almost like Donna Reed type thing. The dad isn't part, but he's the provider. And so, I mean, he would throw a soccer ball or like baseball outside and fix our bikes and stuff. And I mean, I thought the world of him. I joined the Army for him to be proud of me. We went to the same basic training. I was so proud to talk to him about it, but nothing really.
Wow. Did he ever say, I'm so proud of you?
No, never. I've never heard that. In fact, I've never even heard that from my mom. I used to hear all the time how proud my mom was of my older sister. Wow. And I used to hear her tell me all the time, oh, your sister is she loves her cats. Debbie, she just takes so good care. And then I would be on the phone with her and be like, I have dogs too, and I love them very much. Like it was never.
She loves her cat.
Yes, she would. Yes. And how proud she was of her and how hard she worked, but she didn't work, and how it was so hard for her to be a mom. But then I would, tell her I was tired of working. And I'm like, maybe I'm going to stay home with the kids. Oh, that's ridiculous, Debbie. You should. That's just insane. You have these clients, you have to work. And I'm like, I don't get it. The other 2 don't work. Why do I have to work?
Wow. There are so many layers.
There are. So I know. I hope it's not like all over the place.
No, it's beautiful.
Okay.
So if somebody that's listening to this, it just resonates with them going, oh my God, that's my mom. That's my story. That's what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm starting to see all of this. And I'm putting these puzzle pieces together. Like, what advice do you give them? If they're at the very beginning where you were at 40 years old. Like,
it's funny when you say that if somebody else is out there, my stomach just drops,
There is.
Yeah, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, For me, it was the therapy. It was the other person hearing my story and then relaying it back to me in ways that I never saw it. A lot of times she would say things that Brad had been saying to me for years, but I just didn't hear it. It was, and it's because I think she didn't know it. So it was like either she's going to tell me I'm crazy and to move on, or she's going to tell me, I never thought she was going to tell me that I was abused. I never in my life, I've never saw it that way, but it is 100% abuse, and I still don't like saying it. It makes me want to throw up a little bit. And one of the things that my therapist said, and for anyone out there who does have this thought, she said that this is one of the hardest abuses because it's mental and it's manipulating and it's underlying love. And so it could be so hard for someone to see where it was. And I guess I recommend holding on to the bad sense of, I do have those text messages, because when I am questioning, I'll go back and see them from the new Deb, and I'll read them and be like, oh yeah, okay, you made the right decision. Because when it is your mom and your dad, I could literally pick up the phone tomorrow and all of this be over, as long as I apologize for everything and totally stick my tail between my legs. So when you're in your weakest, it's almost like an alcoholic. There are bars everywhere. I can literally pick up the phone at any given moment and say, I'm so sorry, mom and dad. And then I can get a hug from my mom again. So looking back at those text messages is the reminder. So
I almost feel like you're going crazy. Like, oh, I've just made up these things in my mind.
100%. 100. And I think that's why I don't want to talk about it. And I didn't want to do this, because my fear isn't who's out there that's hearing me the same. It's who's out there being like, oh, are you kidding? This is your trauma. Because I don't have the bruises or the sexual assault. I don't have it. I just know what I had. And I know the little girl in that room, I know how sad she was and how confused. I had to do a lot of talking to that little girl in therapy. I had to look in the rearview mirror and talk to her. That was not easy at all. That was not easy.
Inner child work is so hard.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so hard.
And that's my problem. I don't know how to go back to that little girl and tell her she's going to be okay. Because when I go back to that little girl, the hurt is so there, because I'm so confused, religion wasn't helping me, I thought my friends were. All of a sudden I found this therapist, and then we had to leave that therapist. Everything that was safety to me was not there. And so I feel for her, and I feel bad for anyone who has this. And I wish we could get this sort of Munchausen type thing out there. And then to make the layers even crazier, I feel bad for my mom, because that's the only love she knows. She truly believes she's loving me the way she's supposed to. And that's sad for...
It's twisted.
Right.
Remember that movie, The Room? It was the woman, it was like based on a true story, and it was like a woman, and she got abducted and then had a son, and they were in a room, and then they got found, and then they went home, and the little boy, and they were trying to like go back into the regular world. And that movie was so eye-opening for me, because they went back to the room after they, put the guy in jail, and the little boy it was home. It's so amazing to me that little girl in me, it was home. So if I were to tell her it's not right, I almost feel like I'm hurting her more, because that's her, it's her home. It's where normal is.
But can you tell her we're safe now and we're loved now, and we're whole again?
I can now. And that's why I wanted so badly to do this. I didn't want so badly to do this. Let's be honest. I wanted to do it tonight because I wanted to see what tomorrow would bring on my birthday. I don't want to go another year doing this, and I want the new chapters of my life. And I want to forgive my mom. And I'm working there. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I'm going to forgive her until she's gone. I just don't know. And that's just being totally raw.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I truly believe the day I get that call, I'm going to breathe, like a real breathe. Yeah. And that's just so weird, it's just so weird.
It's not weird. I'm thinking back to Nancy's story when she talked about when her abuser passed away and how she fell to her knees and screamed, "I'm free."
Isn't that so weird how you just long for that day? Most parent people would never want to hear that, I want that day. Whether it be her here or not, I just want to scream, "I'm free,"
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
The other thing too is that, you're only 2 years into your awakening.
Yeah.
You're just in the infant stages of just everything just peeling away and starting your healing. So that might be when, when she transitions to the other side, that is when you feel free. But maybe possibly it might be in 6 months, in 1 year. So absolutely. I completely, I have no idea what you've experienced, but I can understand to the level that I have, of understanding that I get that.
Right.
And I can respect that, that is something that you see as the only way that you'll find freedom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what's so nice about this, but listening to other people's, it may not be the same thing, but the feelings of what, it does make you feel like, oh, I'm not alone. We're all kind of going through something, and to know that, we can feel like we get it, and it makes you feel safe to be able to say weird things like that.
And you are safe.
Yeah, I know. You guys are awesome. You guys are like Barbara Walters. You made me cry.
We like to.
We do.
If somebody, your story resonates the fuck out of them, oh my God, that's me, and I have nobody to turn to, would you be willing to be open to letting them come to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, I don't know that I would know exactly what to say, you know what I mean?
But
yeah,
absolutely.
And it would help me too, to hear. Yeah, because
you've talked about how this is not something that's really reported a whole lot.
No.
So if somebody's like, "Oh my God, that's me."
Yeah.
And they have nobody to turn to.
Absolutely.
It would be amazing for you to just give them at least some direction and then just some support in any way that you can.
Yeah.
So we would offer that to those that are listening, that if they need that they can message us privately, and that we will connect them with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. Yeah. I believe mental health is the main point of a ton of people's trauma. You know what I mean? Whether it be sexual or this or that person needed the help that they needed. And I love that you guys do this so that we can change the world.
Yeah.
One margarita.
That's
Changing the world one margarita at a time. I love that.
Or 2 and 3.
Oh my God. We love you so much. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so
Thank you for getting me to do this.
Are you okay?
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll just punch you all when we're done.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook.